starting.
Very good afternoon to all of you and welcome to Grants Plus webinar series from Dhwani Foundation. I am Lalita Mohan from Dhwani. Dhwani Foundation works very closely with small, rural and grassroots NGOs and helps them in strengthening their organizational development. The vision of Dhwani Foundation is a vibrant and credible social sector. To achieve this vision, we believe it is important to engage with all the major stakeholders in the sector, NGOs, federations, government, academia, donors, etc. The Grants Plus webinar series was launched with the purpose of engaging with a very critical stakeholder, the donor. So the topic for today's webinar is NGO partnership management for CSRs and foundations. So why this topic? Giving in India has been rapidly growing over the last decade. On one hand, organizational donors such as CSRs, foundations, aggregators, and funding agencies are increasing. On the other hand, the number of NGOs are also on the rise. All these donors are looking to build meaningful partnerships with NGOs to tackle the various social issues that we face today. The purpose of this webinar is to explore ways of strengthening the partnerships between the funding organizations and the NGOs. This can potentially lead to improved long-term and sustained impact in the social sector. So we have with us a very experienced team of panelists today. They not only come with many years of experience in the social sector, each of them has the experience of working with a large number of NGOs. Their insights and perspectives will greatly help donors to understand the nuances of a good donor-NGO partnership. So let me start by introducing our panelists for today. We have with us Puja Marwaha. Puja is the Chief Executive of CRY, Child Rights and Youth. She believes that children are the very foundation of every nation's growth and development aspirations. It was this belief that fueled her passion for children's rights and inspired her to become a full-fledged part of the social sector in 1994. For the past 29 years, Puja has helped build an organizational framework for CRY that best captures the essence of justice and equity. Her work is focused on creation of an organizational character that attempts to foster a passion for children, a high degree of individual accountability to children, and a belief in every person's potential to bring change for children. She currently also serves on the board of Dhwani Voluntary Action Network India in an endeavor to strengthen public mobilization for social causes. Puja is a TEDx speaker and serves on the academic advisory board of XIMB School of Sustainability. Welcome, Puja.
Thank you, Lalita.
We have another, one of the speakers is yet to join. There are some technical issues. So we have with us KN Gopinath. Gopi is the Executive Director of Dhwani Foundation. He has over 25 years of diverse experience in the social sector with a long stint at APD, the Association of People with Disability, as its Executive Director of Operations in Bangalore. At Dhwani, he works closely with the leadership of NGOs, federations, and other key social sector players to promote credibility and accountability of the social organizations. Welcome, Gopi.
Thank you.
So before we start, a big thank you to all of you, our speakers, for accepting our request and agreeing to be on our panel today. So now we are just waiting for Mr. Chetan Kapoor from Mahindra Foundation to join us. He should be joining any minute. So shall we start discussions with Puja?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Puja, I would like to start with you. CRY today is a household name in India. I mean, who does not or has not heard about CRY? It has a long-standing history of being a very large, successful, and trustworthy organization. You have the experience of having worked with more than 750 NGOs. So as a donor, how would you define NGO partnership management? And what are some of the key elements a good partnership between a donor and an NGO? Puja?
Thank you,
One
Lalita.
second, Puja, before you...
Chetan's
Yeah,
here.
before you take Chetan is joining. Welcome, Chetan. I'm sorry you had some technical glitches.
No,
So,
my apologies. And thank you so much. Really sorry. I mean, technology failed at the last moment, and so that's why the slight delay. But pleasure being here. Thank you so much for inviting me. And Pooja, wonderful to meet you as well.
Wonderful,
I'm sorry.
Chetan.
Please continue.
Yeah, so you came in the right time, Chetan. We were just about to start the questions. We just finished the introductions, so it was okay. So I will be glad to introduce.
Oh dear. We lost Lalita.
More than 2 decades of rich experience in the development sector. His core areas of expertise over the years have been education and skill development. He has shaped organization strategy and strengthened systems to enable high-impact program delivery in these areas. He joined Tech Mahindra Foundation in 2016 as a Chief Operating Officer, and since then has been an integral part of the foundation. He conceptualized the foundation's flagship skill development program, SMART, which is now one of the largest CSR-led urban skill development programs in India. He is a part of the Skill Development Committee of FICCI and is also a member of the task force constituted by FICCI to suggest reforms in the regulatory framework of skill development in India. He has been a member of the Curriculum Reform Committee constituted by the Government of Delhi for transforming education in Delhi government schools. With a strong commitment to the Mahindra Group's belief in rising for an equal world, Chetan aspires to continue contributing towards a resilient, empowered, inclusive, and sustainable future for the generations to come. Welcome, Chetan. Happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lalita. Privileged once again. Sorry, I've already taken too much time. This is a very long introduction. I must tell my communication team to shorten it a little bit.
I was also thinking.
Yes. Thank you. Please go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So we will start with you, Puja. Shall I just repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Would you like me to repeat? Yeah. So like I was just telling, CRY today is a household name, and it has a long-standing history of being a very large, successful, and a trustworthy organization. You have the experience of having worked with more than 750 NGOs. So as a donor, how would you define an NGO partnership management? And what, according to you, are some of the key elements of a good partnership between a donor and an NGO? Puja?
Thank you, Lalita. Very big question. I would actually, to me, there are, 3 or 4 pillars that we have experienced and used and lived, hopefully through these 40 years. I think the first one really is that of trust. Yeah, you have to look at, understand that there is shared purpose, that this is not just you funding somebody to deliver something. The NGO partner is not an agency. It is they are true partners. And more importantly, we as funding organizations cannot do without them. What a local NGO can reach in a common corner of Machilipatnam. Yeah, it's not something that somebody like us can reach. What we can do, perhaps, is support them with the funds, with the, with the just the being there for them, yeah, and being able to help them to grow. So to me, that is the first thing, I think, to treat and trust your NGO partner as an equal. And not just as an equal, but perhaps more, because they are delivering what you are committing, right, to children. And that's been our first, I think, principle. And therefore, this principle has been lived out in the second principle that we've always used, which is these partnerships have to be sustainable. It's very well to say, trust me. But if I am now giving you very short-term projects and saying, you know what, I will leave, you have to attain this in 2 years, or else I will leave you. Yeah, if you start believing that development is a sprint, and our role as a funder is to just achieve a small piece of outcomes, that does not make a good partnership. We have to believe that the development of the community is it's a marathon. B, it's going to have a lot of ups and downs. There will be unexpected obstacles. We have seen obstacles of so many kinds. So we may have used, a certain program framework in a particular uh, place and thought, okay, now this has worked among the tribals of, near Kalyan, near Bombay. So let us use the same thing for working with, let's say, Chenchu tribals in Andhra. And then we discover that the Chenchus are actually primitive tribes. Their mindset, their thinking, the way they will absorb strategies and change will be very different. So as a donor partner, you have to realize that the same concept will not work. And therefore, you have to be able to take both uh, positive strides and negative comments. Otherwise, you'll never get the truth, right? If I only say, I only want you to succeed, do not come and tell me, why this didn't happen or whatever, that's not going to work. So I think for true partnership, CRY has had a principle which said, and it's difficult to live by because it says, till you need me, I'll be there. So sometimes this is 10 years, sometimes it is 5 years, sometimes it's 15 years, sometimes it's 20 years. There are many successful organizations today. So we always saw our role as a funding organization as helping to create civil society organizations that are strong, powerful, and can stand on their own feet and help them. And therefore, that brings me to the fourth principle, right? Or the fourth leg, which is if I truly see this as a partnership and I want this partner to thrive because I believe that they are there to serve the community they live in. One of the things we look at is what is the leadership of this organization? Is it a set of people who are transplanted from outside, who don't really understand the community, who may not even be from the community? Or is it people who have a stake in that community and very often are from that community? Yeah. So I know that today is the time of having very, shiny looking models, created by us sitting in a university somewhere and taking it out. But that is, to my mind, not the kind of NGO partner I would look for. I would look for somebody who actually feels and whose heart is torn apart by the problems of that community. And all the better if they are from that community, right? But what does that mean? That means that as a funding partner, or as a partner who then has access to ideas, resources, other organizations, other people, networks doing the same thing, then my role becomes to enable or grow this organization to access all of that, to access those resources, to access those networks, and sometimes to access ideas. So we found in our journey that it was very useful to find people who, for example, could be developing a particular education methodology or could be developing a certain way of looking at health rights and then take that knowledge to other partners. So we found that over time, get people to network, talk to each other. We have funded exposure visits. So people can get to go. So someone from sitting in Tamil Nadu can go all the way, may go to UP or may go to Uttarakhand and actually look at a similar program that is happening there. And we believe that those conversations, those interactions sometimes have learnings that we as a funding partner may not be privy to, and it's okay. So I think that if you go into funding with an objective saying, I want to create sustainable institutions who will thrive and live and prosper in their own way, even way after I've left. That makes a good partnership. Because without that, what? I'm only treating you as a delivery agency. Then it doesn't work.
Thank you, Puja. So trust, shared purpose, and treat them as equals. Very powerful needs for a good partnership, and of course, creating sustainable institutions. Now, I would like to come to you, Chetan. The Tech Mahindra Foundation works with many NGOs across India. So, as a corporate CSR, what are some of the essential aspects of an NGO that you look for while deciding to partner with them? Chetan?
Yeah, thanks, Lalita. Happy to take that question and just build on what Pooja has just said, because there is a lot that is common in the way that Tech Mahindra Foundation has been looking at partnerships and what Pooja just mentioned. Just to give the audience a little bit of a background, Tech Mahindra Foundation has been running since the year 2006, 2007. Our deep focus is on education, employability, and persons with disabilities. And for the first almost 10 years of our existence, we were only working through partner NGOs. But since the year 2016, we have also gone into a bit of direct implementation. So I think we are one of the very few CSR entities which have a fairly healthy mix of work being done directly as well as through partner NGOs. Almost about 70% of our overall portfolio is through partners, and about 30% is directly by Tech Mahindra Foundation. This model has served us well because there's been a lot of learning from both sides, and we look upon ourselves not really as funders. In fact, I keep telling my team that it's Tech Mahindra which is funding us at Tech Mahindra Foundation. We have to stay close to who we exist for, which is the people who we work with. So the students, the teachers, the children who are the core beneficiaries of all the projects that we implement. Now, in choosing our NGO partners, I'd like to talk specifically about the context of our skill development program called Smart First, because that's the program that I've had the privilege of being a part of from the day it was conceptualized. Because even prior to joining Tech Mahindra Foundation as a Chief Operating Officer in 2016, I worked as a consultant with the foundation since 2012. And it was my charter to help the foundation build this program. So we knew from the beginning that in order to create a robust, scalable, sustainable skill development program, where the primary beneficiaries are youth from um, um, communities from the lower economic segment in our cities. Important for me to mention that Tech Mahindra Foundation by design is an urban organization. We are working in 11 major cities of India. So our focus is on urban youth as far as our skill development programs are concerned. And so when we started this program, we deliberately chose to work with NGOs that were embedded in communities and had some engagement with, if not youth, at least with children, because in that case, we look at a skill development program as also an education program. At the end of the day, you are enabling youngsters to learn a set of skills, a set of things. And therefore, it's important for organizations to have a pulse on what a good learning program has to be all about. And that was our starting point in terms of selecting the right kind of NGOs to work with. Even till now, in the framework that we use to select the right kind of NGOs, we give a lot of importance to intent and commitment. Both of which are not very easy to gauge sometimes, and therefore there's a fairly intensive process of, what is normally known as due diligence, but we don't just look at it as a due diligence factor. It's almost when you're choosing a partner, you have to make sure that all the steps that are required to be taken. So a lot of visits at the field, like Pooja said, we look very closely as to who the founder or who the senior management is, and to what extent are they involved in the implementation of their existing projects. That for us is an important one, because we know there are NGOs out there who have a quote unquote marketing wing, and they will try and come to you seeking funds, and once the contract is signed, then you don't get to see them. So those are the NGOs that you would stay away from, because the kind of commitment and passion and intent which is required at the ground level to actually bring about the kind of changes that we wish to see, that is something which is integral to how we've been operating. In addition to that, it's important to understand that even though an NGO may have the right intent, the right commitment, it's not necessary that its objectives will align with our objectives. So the second point, which is important, is alignment. So after intent and commitment is the alignment point, where there has to be, for a relationship to sustain over a long period of time, this alignment is important. For us, for example, as I mentioned, it's important in our skill development program to ensure not just employability enhancement of the youth, but also that they are able to get into entry-level jobs, right? So as long as the motive of skill development of the NGO that we are going to partner with aligns with this idea that skill development is essentially about creating the right package, which includes employability enhancement and employment, connection to employment. So that's an important one. Um, the third part, so it's actually a four-pronged framework that I'm sharing with you upfront. After the intent and alignment and intent and the alignment part, the third, which helps us build a partnership, is the attitude with which the partner comes on board. And I would want to dwell upon this a little bit more, because as Puja mentioned, trust is critical. But how does trust build? I think the first step in that is mutual respect. It's extremely important that the funders understand uh, that the NGOs which are working at the ground level are doing yeoman service, are doing a huge service, and that must be respected. So there is no way that a funder can just go with the approach that, okay, we have the money, you have to implement. So I've seen organizations, I've seen corporates sometimes treat NGO partners no different as you would do a vendor, right? That's I think is a big mistake, because what in that kind of an association, the necessary element of respect does not come, right? But it is mutual. I've also seen that there are NGOs who feel that, okay, these guys are just going to give us the money, we can do whatever that we want. That also obviously does not work. So the NGOs have to understand that there is a lot of value addition that a funding agency which is attached to a large company can bring with it, and should be amenable to taking in the ideas from that. And that's how you form a relationship and association of mutual respect, right? So that's what attitude is all about, because it sometimes takes time for this attitude on both sides to build up. And as funders, it we have to give that time in the partnership, right? In fact, I would go to say that it is the onus is on the funders in this case. Okay, it is a greater responsibility of the funders to make sure that you stay invested, that you work with the NGOs
Okay.
to make sure that you are able to get to that level where there is a mutual respect to get things going. And finally, the fourth factor after the IAA that I just mentioned, intent, alignment, and attitude, the fourth is P for processes. Now, in the times that we are living in, the importance of processes cannot be or can never be overemphasized, right? It's extremely important to follow certain processes, whether it is ensuring that the utilization certificate is submitted on time,
Absolutely.
whether it is ensuring that all the compliances which are required from a statutory or otherwise requirement, all of those are complied with. So even if the IAA is in place, okay, if there is an NGO who, despite our repeated reminders, despite helping them, guiding them, are not able to adhere to certain processes that are expected, then a partnership is difficult to maintain for a long time. And we've seen, unfortunately, these cases. Of course, it's with processes that we really go all out to make sure that whatever capacities that need to be strengthened. So for example, the HR team at Tech Mahindra Foundation or the finance team at Tech Mahindra Foundation, they have the mandate to work with the NGOs that we partner with to help them strengthen their HR processes or their financial processes. And that's something that we've been doing. But despite that, if we see that processes are not adhered to or respected, then sometimes it's difficult to continue the relationship. So I know it's been a bit of a monologue, but I hope that sort of answers your question.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Chetan. So intent, commitment, senior management involvement in implementation of projects, alignment, attitude of the partners, mutual respect. Onus is on the funders and processes are very critical. So whole lot of inputs and insights from here. Now, I would like to come to you, Gopi. So Dhwani partners with NGOs in the area of capacity building. In this process, what are some of the key approaches to your partnership with NGOs, and how do you go about doing this? Go.
Yeah, so thanks, Lita. I think both Puja and Chetan, in a way, did most of the part of what I am supposed to share. I think slightly the difference between CRY and Tech Mahindra, we are not a donor, but we are a partner in helping NGOs to build the processes and systems, which in a way prepare them to go to the donors. So that's how I see Dhwani's role. Of course, Dhwani's focus always has been rural, grassroots, small size organizations. So when we see this segment, the partnership approach, the way we evolved over the years, within the small rural, we found there is different varieties. I think the one thing that we look at it, how do we actually design initiative that can first meet to the different segment? Example, if an organization's, let's say with the budgets of below 30-40 lakhs, what is the real capacity building initiative they require? If an organizations are anywhere around above 50 lakhs to 2 crores organization, their requirements of capacity building is different. I think one of the key approach Dhwani looked at it, how do we develop our initiative that meets the specific category within the grassroots thing? So that in a way address the specific needs rather than a generic capacity building program. So that's the key thing. So in a way, example, we have designed programs, we call something called Nirantara Classic. This program is designed for organizations who are minimum with 40 lakhs and above budgets up to 2 crores. But we have another side, what we call Nirantara Light, which is for emerging organizations. So one focus of helping partners to see whether how you segment them based on their needs, so that don't overload even in the name of capacity building, which may not be required for a certain set of organization. I think that is the first approach in building the partnership. How do we select partnership? Of course, ours is more of a change management program because it is a lot of building processes and systems. So in this process, the key thing for us is there a desired need, expressed need in an NGO for a change. If that is not there, then it's not going to work. So we spend a lot of time first to understand why an organization says, yeah, I want to change, I want to adapt process and system. So that's where the groundwork on the field, spending time with not just the NGO founder. What we found is in the change management, board plays a huge role. So we spend a lot of time with the board members of NGOs, understanding why they think they want to get into this sort of interventions, whether they are really open, whether they really want to make a change, for what reasons both think this type of things are required. So I think spending time listening to the board members, listening to the founder, understanding why this organization desire to undergo a program for change making or a capacity building, that helps us a lot in selecting the right partners, I think. The next one is, of course, there is certain process we have set in. This is basically because we run a cohort-based programs. Each of our cohort is anywhere between 30 to 35 partners. That means at one go, 30, 35 partners start with each initiatives. So for that, there are certain processes organizations has to follow. So these processes again helps us to see whether they are serious in learning, whether they can put time and efforts in learning process, because as a part of capacity building, the key thing whether they have a time, because everybody says I want to learn, but do they have a time to participate? Do they have a actually required time to actually implement what they learn? So that is where some of our selection process actually helps us to see whether this organization has a time, whether they could really get involved into it. Do they have people? Can they dedicate people? I think the last one is, again, while we are selecting NGOs, among grassroots, again, we look for who are most deserving NGOs. So example, can we look at more women-led organizations? Can we look at NGOs led by marginalized communities? Can we look at NGOs led by people with disabilities? So what Dhwani is looking at within an NGO segment, we see there's a marginalized segment of NGOs, right? Maybe within the remote village means, which is remote village? So example, we are working in Orissa. So we selectively took some choice, decisions to say, yeah, we have to actually go to the most remote places. So it could be Malkangiri district or it could be Kandhamal district. So that is where actually is more important to go rather than to say I'll work in Puri. So one is, how do we actually look at within the NGO segment, within the grassroots, most deserving. So more importantly for, I think both Chetan and Puja mentioned, it's a equal mutual respect. It is a true partnership. It is finally a trust, because both of us should believe, I should believe as Dhwani, yes, I have a genuine interest to really support and work and also learn from them. Similarly, a partner should actually say, yeah, this is something, a fruitful journey we can walk through. So even in a capacity building, the last part, it's not that I am going to teach you. So this is more than that, what is there already? What strength they already have it. So it's more of guiding, mentoring, also pick good practices from my partners and take it to other people. So that equal learning is also required, rather than to say, oh, I am the giver and you are the receiver, will not work. So we always kept that type of a partnership. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Gopi. So a desire for change from the NGOs is most critical. And you listen to the leaders and board members, and that really helps in deciding. And of course, I think the most important, that working with the marginalized among the NGO segment. So now I would like to come to another very important aspect of NGO donor partnership, which is a long-term funding and long-term support. So I want to come to you, Puja. For example, CRY has more than 4 decades of experience in working with many NGOs. So how important do you think is long-term support to NGOs? Of course, you didn't talk about it initially. Can you share some examples of long-term support has actually made a difference to the NGOs that you work with? Puja?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about some people. I think, as I said, CRY, the concept initially was very much to say, can we angel fund ideas? One of the examples we love to give, of course, is Shanta Sinha from MV Foundation, because she literally wrote a letter to CRY saying, she was a college professor. She said, I want to try this at that time seemingly impossible task of completely releasing children from labor. As you know, even today, unfortunately, the dialogues are like, oh, they still need to work and we'll just run some non-formal classes. And Shanta said, no, we're going to release them. This is not acceptable. And Cry apparently sent her first check in the mail and said, go off and try this idea. So, and then of course she became MV Foundation and won a Magsaysay and so on. And I don't have to list her achievements. And I think that's what we're proud of, because what we're proud of is that even though the kind of maybe money that Cry would have given would have become over time very small compared to other funders, but the relationship in terms of helping strategize, capacity building. And, when Gopi was talking about capacity building, I was thinking that is so very true that we from 94 began a very formal part of our support is through something that's called grant risk management, which is essentially training all our partners in financial accounting, keeping them abreast of statutory compliances, giving them access to the best advice as well as auditing. Yeah. And therefore creating a very graded kind of set of systems to figure out what state their processes are in. And do they have hope or do they not have hope? Maybe some people are never going to be able to meet all compliances, and that's not good for them as well as for us. Yeah. So actually putting those kind of programs in place can happen only if you are a committed funder. And not that they think you're going to pull the carpet out from them next year. Yeah. So in Cry, we have not actually got a start date, end date. Sometimes that is a little bit, I suppose, unnerving for the partners, because we sign annual agreements and we negotiate what are the plans going to be and so on. But there is an understanding, as I said, that we will stay with you till you need us. Some people don't need us. I mean, as we have Apnale, who we funded for its first 15 years and then finally left with a corpus, or there is a example of mobile creches or networks like CSCL, which we funded for many, many years. There are also examples like Pratham or Childline, where we realized within a year or two, they didn't need us. The capacity to raise funds was so high, the appeal of what they were doing was so high that they were able to go it on their own. So therefore, to me, sustainability is about that. It's about saying, is this partnership a mutually beneficial one? And of course, there is an elephant in the room, right? End of the day, there is money. There's a check being given, and there is a threatening nature to that. So how you play it as an organization is very critical. I remember from the first day I joined Cry, the rules were very clear on how you need to behave, how much you will be with your partners on the field. You will not arrive in a SUV and, not hang out with people. You will come in a bus and you will be there with people. So I believe that because you are the powerful person in the partnership, it's actually your responsibility. And I heard Chetan say that as well. It's your responsibility to create the equality, because they cannot create it, boss. At the end of the day, you're going to be signing a check. And that is a threatening process, right? They're going to be giving you accounts. They're going to be giving you a utilization certificate. But how can you make that into a process that also feels empowering? So we decided we would never just do audits. We would do audits, but we would also run capacity building programs in accounting. We would fund accountants. So we actually forced most of our even very small partners to say, you have to have an accountant. I will pay the salary. Yeah, but I think those sort of things is what can lead to a sustainable partnership, because at the end of the day, it has to work for both. Isn't it? It's not just about longevity, but it's about the quality of what you are attempting to do.
Thank you, Puja. So look, start date and end date. I think that's a very powerful statement to explain a long-term relationship. Now, I want to dwell on the same topic with you, Chetan. I understand that Tech Mahindra believes in long-term relationship with NGOs. So, could you give us your perspective on why long-term funding is important? And can you also share a few examples where you saw long-term funding making lasting impact with the beneficiaries? Chetan?
Sure, Lalita. Yes. So, like Pooja said, even we don't have a fixed start date, end date. So that's been the approach. And I'll tell you why, what the thought behind this has been. First and foremost, it is looking at the beneficiaries themselves. So when I mentioned earlier that we work with education and employability, instead of considering these two as verticals, we look at both of these as part of a continuum. So we understand that at the end of the day, those who are currently being served in the education net are the ones who are going to need the employability services later on, right? So the need of that same beneficiary over time evolves. And therefore, if we were to say that, okay, we are only interested in making sure that you do your education, after that, we are not bothered. That's not the right thing to do. There's a possibility that the same kid who we are currently working with in an education program might need support when it comes to getting an employment. So from that perspective, you need to have a long-term approach. Nowhere is this long-term approach more important than the work that we've done in the disability space. So over there in the disability space, and Gopi knows that we've been supporting APD, Association for Persons with Disability, for the longest time. We realized that over there is no way that you can, think of quote unquote an exit strategy just for the sake of it, right? You need to, in fact, in the case of disability, you need to think of continuity more than just sustainability. You need to think of the fact that if there is a child from a family who and the family cannot afford this child's chronic therapy, suppose he or she needs ongoing physiotherapy or occupational therapy for several years, that's a need that is going to be there with the child, with the family. And therefore, once we've committed to supporting this child in through our disability projects, it would be inhuman to say that, okay, we will sort of stop after 3 years or whatever, right? You have to have a longer term approach over there. And we've seen this now in several of our projects. We've been supporting a number of NGOs for more than 10 years, especially those working in disability, where over time we've seen remarkable changes, not just in the lives of the children who are associated, but also in the NGO itself. And from time to time, many of our NGO partners, whether it is Ruma Roka of Noida Deaf Society, we've been funding them for more than 10 years now. There is Jayashri at Spastin, the Spastic Society of Tamil Nadu. There is Radhika Alkazi from Astha in Delhi, again doing some phenomenal work. All of these have been, our partners for a long time, and we realize that the kind of assurance which these organizations have that Tech Mahindra Foundation is there to support them gives them, more a greater ability to just focus on what they are meant to. I mean, we've seen that if funders have a very short term approach, the NGO heads are forever scrounging, thinking where the next funding is going to come from. And therefore, they are not able to spend the requisite time in ensuring that the project implementation is happening as it should, that the organization's capacity is getting developed as it should, right? So that's why I think it's important to for funders to have a long-term approach. But at the same time, it's important for NGOs to realize that they can't take long-term funding for granted. Okay, it's important for NGOs to realize that if a funder, if there is an organization which is entrusting them with the funds to carry out certain work, that work is sacrosanct. Okay, so and the funds that are coming in, accountability of it is sacrosanct. So you can't say that, okay, you can just give us the funds, we'll do whatever that, we'd like to. There is a certain degree of, there is a certain expectation. And I think funders who are putting in their money, I mean, we get our money from Tech Mahindra, and I'm accountable to the board of Tech Mahindra to make sure that that money is well spent, right? And in the similar vein, the NGOs who we entrust funds to need to have that accountability to make sure that yes, for continued funding there are certain deliverables, there is a certain approach to work that has to be adhered to. So in that sense, and I also believe that in thinking of sustainability, you have to think of not just sustaining a program, but more importantly, sustaining the benefits of the program. And in certain cases, it's possible, and we've seen this happen, that in a good NGO implemented project, over time you have managed to um, pass on the responsibility to the community to carry on that work, which is a very sound model to work with. So in that case, if you are able to get the community to own some part of the work, then phasing out is not just the right thing to do, but is kind of important, through, because through that you can, and we've done this in some of the education projects that we worked on, where we've realized that you do not have to bring it to a point where the organization begins to get completely dependent on you as a funder and is not looking at engaging the community to make sure that the uh, essentials of what is required to bring about the changes are not passed on to the community. So it's important to involve the community in that sense. And if you are able to make a sustainable model through that approach, I think that's the ideal scenario.
Thanks, Chetan. Yes, making them sustainable is most important. Now, Gopi, Dhwani is not a donor agency, but your partnerships are generally long-term with NGOs. So how do you sustain long-term engagement and drive large organizational changes through Dhwani?
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. I think what I have realized is it's a little complex work that Dhoni is trying to do with NGOs, which is make them to change the way they are operating today. So I always call our job is doing something without any authority in this organization. Neither I am a donor, nor I have anything to say, okay, I'm going to offer you this, but how do you do it, this change? I think primarily the key thing in this whole change management, what we call, in the terms of, just to give an idea, our initiatives actually expect NGOs to adapt some over 200 different types of practices in 8 different areas, starting from compliances, moving on to many areas like governance, HR, finance and accounting, like that. Just to take one example, which is quite interesting and a complex thing for NGOs. When we talk about governance, so we look at who sits on the board of our NGOs. In every cohort, we do initially after first 3 months, once we start the program, we do a bit of an analysis of the current board members. So what we come across in every cohort so far we have run, you will see about 40 to 45% of our partners' boards are family members. So not 1, 2, 3 people sitting on the board. Or you will see many times there is an employee one side, other side the same person is a trustee of the organization. So this is one example how complex when you look at the change management. So in the whole process of our change management, we said this is not a good governance. So having many family members, out of 5 board members, 3 people are family members. Of course, then definitely either Chetan Puja does not like. This is not a good governance. So how do you change it, right? So it's not very easy for a founder or the existing board members who have been running it for many years. Now, how do I change, right? And we have seen many times this complexity comes in. So like this, there are 200 other changes has to happen. So you are running now 50% of your transaction and finance is cash. So we say in our program, no, it should be actually a zero cash if possible. Otherwise, at least you cannot run more than 5% cash. It's not allowed. But this is a practice going on for many years. How do you actually now change this whole practice move from cash to online or check, whatever it is? So some of these are very tricky change management aspects. So how do you drive it? So few things that we have adapted. The first thing is build a good relationship, trustworthy relationship that these practices are good for you as an organization. Because if you don't run a good organization, just a good work alone will not make others to accept you. Good work is great, everybody likes you, but you have to run a good organization. So that is the largest communication that we do with the organization leadership. Again, who are the leaders? I think what we have found is even a founders in an NGO require help to make these changes. Just I am the heading the organization, I alone cannot make a change of some of these natures what we are talking. So there we bring in lot of engagement with interactions with the board. That happens from Dhwani board members. I think a Dhwani leadership, including my trustees, senior management, we work with the NGO boards and NGO leadership. I think that helps a lot. That relationship among the senior people, board to board, that interaction is another very interesting process we have evolved. So in every cohort, we have a rule. Over a period of our partnership, 2 times Dhwani trustees go to their places, to every partner place. And we meet the full board there. And that interaction, that whole conversation, helping them to see what is right, what is good, what is well accepted today, makes a huge difference. I think our third other thing actually very interesting is all our programs are largely residential training programs where this whole cohort leaders comes for many days together. I think I have seen that is a very interesting process of influencing change. Peer learning happens a lot. So this NGO leader say, actually, I changed. I brought in a new board member. I took this decision. Right? Other person then gets a curiosity. How did you do it? I'm finding difficult to tell my husband, please get down from the board. Right? But you have done it. How did you do it? Right? That is a beautiful peer learning. I think we found peer learning makes a huge difference. And we have brought in an assessment culture. So we start with something called a baseline. So where are you against these 205 parameters is the first exercise we do. And as we go on with them, we get on every 6 months, do an assessment. This tool really inspires them. So suddenly an NGO now knows what I don't have. And that is what I keep hearing from the ground. Many NGO leaders says, I didn't even know what I did not have in my organization. Now I know what I have, what I don't have. Once they are aware what they have, what they don't have with this whole assessment tool, then we see how people immediately start working on it because they realize it. Yeah, this is necessary. I know what I don't have it. Now I also know with this whole intervention what tools I can use to actually bring those changes. I think assessment is another big thing we have found. It really naturally it make influence in the organizations leadership mind. I think the last thing is show the hope because mostly the grassroots organization in today's context, everybody is scared actually. Oh, FCRA has gone now. Amendment has really stopped money coming to me. CSR is far away from me. So still where will the CSR come to my small village? I think there's a lot of this type of real worry actually. So that's what I see every day in the field. Grassroots organizations is becoming actually very vulnerable. So the last thing we do is look at there is a hope, there is a future, there is a past. Showcase them even how many new donors are coming in, how many possibilities are there for you to look at an opportunity. So what are the different things you can do in terms of actually exploring the newer opportunities that is existing? I think the hope building along with all this process system, everything, and showcasing that there is something possible for them. to actually move forward. I think these are few things that we found makes organization to get into this change management. And we have found it in all of the batches, hardly we have dropouts. And what we have seen when we do the baseline, the average score in every cohort is anywhere between 38 to 40% against our 205 parameters. When we do the end line assessment, all our batches so far did anywhere between 92 to 94%. That means it is possible for grassroots NGOs to change only if we can walk through with them. Yeah, I'll stop here.
Thank you, Gopi. We have another half an hour, 30 minutes more. So we have to quickly go through 2-3 questions and then see if we have a few minutes to take questions from the attendees. So now next to you, Puja, what are some of the potential risks in a NGO partnership that donors should be aware of? And what are some of the important factors to look for in identifying a reliable partner, especially the risks in a NGO partnership?
Puja, you're on mute.
I was on mute. Yeah, I just realized. I was saying, of course, there are a lot of risks. So one of the key things I think, and I heard Chetan talk about it, is that to have a robust system of selection where you are sure of what your criteria is. And I would go with his, framework where you look for passion and you look for commitment. I think one of the things we look for very deeply is the organization embedded in the community, because there is a risk today, I believe, where increasingly people are learning slicker marketing and PR techniques, and they may not even have a presence in the community, right? You cannot, for example, even if you want to go and run a simple education program, if the community doesn't trust you, they're not going to come. Yeah, you can run a fancy school and nobody will come. And you can then, if they trust you, you can have a program in one room with no fancy technology, and you will get children coming, or you will get, because the community trusts you with their children, right? So that, what is the nature of relationship of the NGO with its community? Does it respect? So we look for respect. One of the things that we have seen is that we have judged NGOs on and actually withdrawn is where the NGO has become there's a certain power, right, in very poor communities. That, when I say if I see somebody dispensing favors, we know there's a problem. Yeah. Vis-a-vis an NGO leader who says, here is what you are entitled to. You can go ask for it at the Zilla Parishad. So that kind of relationship, respect, and willingness to transfer power to the community is very, very critical. 1. 2, just the basics. We do a basic file level analysis of 3 years. Where are the funds coming from? How have people been using it? Are there, for us, it is an alert if there are unidentified donors, which means very possibly that you've just been taking money from the community. So actually to look at and ensure that the organization at least has the basics in place. If, for example, most funding organizations will not be able to fund somebody who does not have an income tax registration, or so on and so forth, right? So to actually, there's a soft side and then there is this basic side, right? You cannot shy away from saying that, oh, we're not going to look at, have you actually met the mandatory commitments, and is there an integrity and honesty in how you have done your work? You may have had the smallest budget up to now, but even that, how has that been done? So to me, that's the second big marker, because that's a risk. There is a risk that the NGO is actually not embedded and is just going to use your money and go there. To me, one of the biggest risks is NGOs who happily drop their main mission and come after you. Means, oh, we do water also, we do this also. I mean, what is your purpose, right? And does your purpose align with mine? Or are you willing to drop the purpose for the sake of money? Always an alert. Yeah, I think always something to be careful about. And then there is, I think someone was able to unmute themselves. Okay. Then I think that the risks are also that like I said, you have to have your audit systems and your systems of being able to do both capacity building, yes, but also to have your audit systems in place to look for risks, yeah, and to be realistic about it. I think programmatically is another area that sometimes we don't look at strongly enough. Um, are they delivering the impact they are committed to? Today, so many years later, CRY is able to create, I mean, we've been able to say, this is the data we need. This is the data you have to generate. So what is their commitment to that data? Because in the end, so my one big thing is that, and I like what Gopi said when you said different size of NGOs will need different systems. So that's what we realize. So we will not measure you on, oh, do you have tally or not? If your entire budget is 3 lakhs, excuse me, why should you have a tally, right? But are you keeping your Chopra's beautifully? We've seen Gandhian organizations who keep impeccable accounts in copybooks. It's fine. What you need to look at is the impeccability. But if you want to grow them, you want to overnight give them 10 lakhs and 20 lakhs, then you will have to build their capacity to absorb that and then have the systems and the accountants in place. So one big lesson we learned was to not flood an organization with money overnight. That we help them to grow gradually, yeah, and not, expose them to suddenly, I've seen it happens, there's a sudden media exposure and then everyone comes running with loads of money to give to them. I mean, they don't know what to do. And they are saying, these guys don't value the money, so I also won't value it. We saw this happen during earthquake. We saw it happen during tsunami. So I think as funders, we also have to be very responsible to the capacity to absorb funds. And to me, that is a risk, right? And of course, Gopi already said it, as that the state of internal governance of the organization. So to have the frameworks in place, like we over time have obviously created frameworks, which is financial framework and organizational framework. What is the status of leadership? Are the founders willing to hand over leadership? Is there a second line? Is it healthy? What is their transparency to the community on their budgets? Yeah. So actually look at those as factors that you measure the health of a organization on. And of course, on program deliverables, right? What I set out to do, am I able to do it or not? So to me, those are really the risks that we need to look out for. I would love to hear Chetan on this.
Yeah, so Chetan, same, I mean, what do you think are the main reasons of success and failure of any partnership?
I think Puja has really covered it very well and comprehensively, and I would echo with almost everything that she mentioned. We've had some very interesting experiences in this regard, and therefore that's how over time we've kind of learned to use the IAAP framework, where we realize that if there is, something wrong with the intent, then that you don't have a choice. Immediate exit is the only option. If we find, and we've had these cases where unfortunately we've seen data being fudged, we've seen unfortunately even financial, so in those cases obviously there's something wrong with the intent, and in order to find that, you obviously need to have checks and balances. So rather than therefore using the word trust, I would keep on using the word respect, because trust is obviously important, but you can't take that for granted. I mean, you can't just say that, okay, we'll give you the money, we trust you, use it the way that you want. No, I think it's upon the funders to make sure that there are frameworks and there are checks and balances to ensure that the money is actually being used well, that the sanctity of data that is coming back to you is being maintained. So for example, in our skill development program, right from day one, we put in place a robust MIS. We trained all our NGO partners who are implementing the skill development program called SMART to use the MIS, and making sure that the MIS tool is not just a monitoring tool, but more than that, in an enabling tool, because at the NGO level, the people who are running the project can look at data longitudinally, learn from it, and make decisions which are appropriate for their projects based on that. Now, once those tools are in place, once that the NGO partners are on board, after that, again, it's a question of making sure that whatever that they are expected to do is being done, and therefore the intent part gets taken care of. The alignment part is very important. So like Puja said, you have NGOs who are willing to change their path just because they know that they can approach you for, so those are obvious risks. Like somebody comes to us and say that, look, we've been doing so far we've been doing agriculture, watershed development, but we can do livelihoods for you. So that obviously doesn't work. What is your previous experience? So and of course, we've seen how relationships over time also evolve and change. There are organizations who we've partnered with, probably found our way of working with them a little too stringent, and over time, and some of them probably could not keep up with what the expectations were, and we've had to part ways. But there's several examples where the relationship has evolved very well, and we've had examples where we started a relationship when the NGO was still in its initial stages, and has grown with us. I mean, not necessarily from our funding support, but using some of the practices that have been built together, have managed to scale significantly in this. Also, the point about organizations being embedded in the communities is very important, especially when you're talking about some very specialized areas like working for children with disabilities, where the kind of intensity which is required at the ground level to work with every child, and not just with children but their parents as well. We've been working with some small organizations in Bhubaneswar and Kolkata, for example, which are really dedicated to working with children with speech and hearing impairment. And you realize that when you work for them, you not only have to do one-to-one work with these children, but also with their parents, right? If you leave the parents out of the equation, then a lot of the benefits that you are trying to accrue would not hold. So these are some of the critical things which funders need to be mindful of, taking a more comprehensive view of what they're trying to do, not being parochial at all. The need of every community could be different, and you have to go in with an open mind and not just always impose your agenda on what is going to happen.
Okay, thank you, Chetan. Since we don't have much time now, we have two more important topics that we wanted to touch upon. One is about supporting beyond the program cost, supporting the admin and capacity building for NGOs, and the other one is the importance of site visits. So, Chetan, if you can take the question on site visits, in one of your blogs, you had said the real classroom is out there. So, now if you can just explain that and why you think site visits are important, especially for the CSR teams, and then Puja can take the question on supporting beyond the program cost. Chetan.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Lalita, for alluding to that particular blog post, which is very close to my heart, because I haven't, learned any social development in a traditional classroom. I did my MBA in international business, which is chalk and cheese when it comes to what I'm doing. But all my learning almost have been in the classrooms of MCD schools in Delhi, which is where I basically worked when I was with Pratham for about 3.5 years at the beginning of my journey. So just going into the field, going into the lanes of East Delhi, understanding the challenges, the nuances, going into MCD schools to understand what are the real challenges which our teachers have to face on a day-to-day basis. I think it's extremely important for any practitioner in the social sector. So, in fact, I think those who come into the sector looking for a desk job and just staying behind their computers and laptops and hoping to do work, we know it doesn't work that way. You have to go out there and spend as much time as possible. Also, because in a country like India, there's so much diversity. So when I remember when in the early days, after Delhi, I happened to visit schools down south and could see the vast difference in not just the way that the schools were being run, but also in the approach and the attitude towards learning and education. I myself come from Bihar. I've grown born and brought up in Patna, and visiting government schools in Bihar was a revelation, because you would normally think that the kind of backwardness that we associate Bihar with would be visible in the classrooms as well. But I was so pleasantly surprised to see some of the brightest kids in some of the poorest conditions, in places like Samastipur or Gaya, now, which is why it's important to go to the field, whatever designation, whatever level you may be at. And I've said this more than once, that the real classroom is the field. So you have to stay closely connected and invested in that.
Thank you, Chetan. And Puja, would you like to talk about going beyond the project cost and help funding, admin, and capacity
Absolutely.
building?
So that's something that I think we have just done from the first day, which was we realized that it's no use to go to an organization and say, do this project, and then not invest in their body, right? Because in the end of the day, it's that institution that's going to deliver the work. And so for us as a funder, it's always been funding salaries for, I used to say, like electricity, bijli, pani, everything, computers, backup for computers, whatever it is that the organization needs in order to grow and in order to sustain itself. Of course, over time, they find other funders, they may create, but it's a myth to say people will find their own sources of funding. If they are truly serving the poorest of the poor, there is no, it's a mythology to say, why don't you generate money from your community? And therefore, as funders, we have to take that responsibility to ensure that they as institutions can survive. For example, do they need capacity building? Everyone needs capacity building, right? In order to be able to do what they are doing better. Like whether if, for example, we give them MIS to fill, that they don't even know how to fill it, or they don't know how to operate a tablet or whatever. What is the real point, right? So I think that to me is very critical as a funder. Please look at the expenses that your funding partners, fundee partners have. And I think to meet those. And, I'd like to carry on with Chetan to say the other thing is to be there with them. I mean, to me, I've always been proud of the fact that CRI people have spent 20 to 25 days on the field with their partners, embedded there. And a lot of people say, oh, does it affect your objectivity? Maybe it does, But if we're going to get this work done together, it's a huge job what we have to do in this country, right? We're going to have to bring our passion to it. It's not going to do to say, acha, theek hai, we need to be very objective and tatu. Yeah, you're going to have to be in it with them. So I totally agree, Chetan, that we have to be there and you have to physically be there and know what is going on. And plus, I think to just look at organizations as institutions, not just as this is already a functioning firm and it will develop and deliver a program for me.
Yeah. Thanks, Puja. So we are having a lot of questions here. I don't think we have too much time to take, but there is a very interesting comment. The attendees using the very word beneficiary can be replaced with project participants, which sounds more dignified. I thought it sounded interesting.
Yeah,
read it out, yes. Yeah. And now, since we don't have much time, can we have some closing remarks from all the three panelists?
Gopi, would you want to please go first?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there any question, one or two want to take later on the chat box, or should we?
Questions, there are many of them. I'm not sure how much time we have.
Fine then. I think I just want to reiterate what Puja said. From Dhwani's perspective, what we keep seeing on the ground. So this is maybe, I would say, an appeal to the donors or foundations. Many of them are here today. I think going beyond a project support is the key today, because ultimately can we build a sustainable organization which can really do whatever its mission it's set for. I think that sustainable organization require beyond just a program support. So it is an organizational support is required. When I say organization, it's again not just from the money perspective. It is also like what Chetan and Puja both said. Can donor committees stand, work together so that together we can build better and impactful program? So that's what I would say.
It's a lovely idea. I think to me, to sum up, I think the biggest word I'm taking from here today is to substitute trust with respect. It goes beyond it, I think. And yet, of course, trust is basic, to trust that human beings are here to do things. What I've actually seen in my many years now in the sector is that actually I don't think I would have survived or even stayed if it had not been for my partners. And what I see of people who are just amazing, who go beyond everything, small digression, like looking at COVID, and I think our partners acted before we did. Before we could get our act together and start raising and say we have to do some disaster work, they were moving. They were out there like walking 5 kilometers, risking their lives. Because at that time we didn't know. And yet they were already there. And I just think that we have so much to learn from the smaller NGOs and what we call partners than they have to learn from us sometimes, really. And I think the other big thing is really mutual accountability to the communities in whose names we raise money, in whose names we do work. The real accountability for us sits there. And if we are accountable, then we have to be systematic. We have to create the processes. We have to be sustainable institutions, because otherwise we would have let them down. So to me, I think these are really the summary, as I see, of this. Imagine if we could all work collaboratively. It's always a dream of mine, Gopi, that I wish, I can see I'm going in somewhere, I'm working with children and education and maybe skilling or something. But that community may need intervention in water or livelihood or agriculture. And I wish that we could, as donor agencies, work together to make that happen for communities, because that will make the change sustainable. So I think that other appeal of yours is really very strong. Trust.
Absolutely.
I mean, I tell people, I'm going back to trust, Chetan, because I keep thinking, people ask me, they say, oh, the new thing about NGOs, oh, they can't be trusted. And And I'm saying, CRA is funded, let's say, till date in 40 years because of the long-term nature. Not that many organizations, but 770, 80 organizations. Not more than 5% of that have turned out to be bad. Have they turned out to be? Yes. Has there been misuse? Yes, but 5%. So how can that not be a representative of this country's NGOs? And I think that is what we have to keep our eye upon. Yeah. Over to you, Chetan.
Absolutely. Just loved what you just said, Puja, because I think at the end of the day, we are all in it together, and funders and NGOs have to, the natural course sometimes is that they, you walk to a tennis court and go to the opposite sides, the funder and the NGO, not
Correct.
realizing that you're actually playing a doubles game and you are in it together. On the other side are the challenges that you are facing, the poverty, the illiteracy, all these things. So you have to be in it together like a team, like how, if you've seen how a good doubles tennis team plays, with a lot of coordination, a lot of understanding that there are some shots which your partner can take better than I can, and be okay with it. And that's exactly how it needs to be done. So I will probably just end with this little analogy from the tennis game.
Beautiful one.
Very interesting. So there is one, I think some NGO on the line, they're asking what is the supporting program available for new startup NGOs. So Gopi, you want to just tell them how to contact you and
Yeah, of course. Dhwani do have a lot of initiative to support startup organizations and smaller organizations. I would say we will leave the website of Dhwani here, so you could write to us, we will respond to you. So can I request Greg or someone to put our website?
Put that up. Maybe you can just put it into the chat.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we had an extremely meaningful, very engaging, very interesting conversation today. Very big thank you to all the participants who have been here in very, very large numbers today. And very, very happy that all of you